Hey guys, I'm Joseph Gamble. I'm one of the park rangers at Norris Dam State Park in East Tennessee. So today we're going to talk about a very interesting chapter in American history that we refer to as the New Deal, or part of the Great Depression. So in 1932, a new president is elected in the United States, and his name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, FDR gets elected on the platform, we have to fix the problems of the Great Depression. You have mass unemployment, people have lost their businesses, people have lost their homes. In addition to economic problems, there are massive environmental problems that are plaguing the United States. The Dust Bowl out in the Midwest, but not even just elsewhere, in Tennessee specifically. There were massive problems with erosion, with deforestation, all sorts of issues that needed to be fixed. They just stretched back for decades. Back in 1917 even, this Tennessee State geologist, his name was Wilbur Nelson, who his entire job was to keep track of the state of the state's natural resources. And he presented a report in 1918, and he basically said, we are in trouble. We have lost so many of our trees, a lot of our forests are gone. He made the statement that our forests are making their last stand against the unscientific practices of the lumbermen. All of this stems not from a malice towards the environment, but more just folks are working to survive. From the time of early colonization all the way up through even to the early 1900s, folks aren't thinking about the environment as this thing to be preserved and conserved and looked after and enjoyed. It's resources in order to survive and to thrive. So this continues all the way up into the early 1900s, where all of these problems have finally begun to compound. And that enters in the same time as you have massive economic problems. So when FDR takes presidency in the spring of 1933, he begins signing things into being. Ideas that have been spoken about and talked about for years, decades in some cases. He basically throws these ideas at the wall and let's see what sticks, let's see what works. One of these, on March 31st, 1933, was the creation of the Civilian Conservation Corps. So the CCC, as they're known, or Roosevelt's Tree Army, was created to do two things. One, to give young people 18 to 25 years old who have been out of work for at least 6 months, who are thus affected by the Depression, a job. That job that paid $1 a day, 30 bucks a month, 5 of which they got to keep as spending money. The other 25 had to be sent home. They got 3 hot meals a day. They got a roof over their head, canvas or otherwise. They got a uniform. Generally, these were all surplus, left over from the First World War, which is why in all the photos you see of the CCC, they look like soldiers in many ways. And they're, in fact, led by the U.S. Army. When this was done, nothing like this had ever been done before in American history. And even though it's technically a relief effort, the U.S. Department of Labor had no experience doing like this. And so they handed it over to the United States Army, to the War Department. You run this. And so they organized them the way they would an Army regiment. They divide them up into companies, place officers and sergeants in command, issue them gear and equipment, and send them out into the vast American wilderness to do work. And this work is to fix those environmental problems that have been plaguing the United States for decades at this point. Among the most famous, of course, it goes in the nickname, they planted trees. Over the 9 years that the CCC existed, from 1933 to 1942, they would plant just over 3 billion trees across the United States. Not only is that unheard of in all of U.S. history, that is unheard of in the whole of the history of our planet. Nothing like that has ever been done before or since in all of human history. But they didn't just plant trees, they helped save forests. They pioneered firefighting practices. The U.S. Forest Service was so short-staffed, it was hard for them to get things done. Now you have 3 million young men spread out across the U.S., many of them working for the Forest Service, working out west. They're fighting fires, they're cutting trails, they're laying telephone wires. They didn't just plant trees, they didn't just help the environment, but they also aided and helped change the way we view the environment. So they worked for parks. The National Park Service supervised the construction of numerous national parks and state parks and facilities in these parks across the nation, including our very own Norris Dam State Park here where I stand. This stonework behind me is CCC craftsmanship. This is the foundation for the Rice Grist Mill, a historic 18th century grist mill that was saved from the floodwaters of Norris Lake to be brought here, not just to be a beautiful piece of scenery on the park, but to help teach tourists about local history here in Appalachia. They built most of your state park systems across the nation. Our own Tennessee state parks are formed, the first 9 parks, because of the CCC. Once that work was done, someone had to take over the mantle. And so we were created in 1937 to continue that. This story is the same throughout the nation. Everywhere you go, you'll see remnants of their craftsmanship, their handiwork, their mark they left. But the biggest mark they left, their true legacy, isn't just the physical pieces, the cabins, the roads, the trees that they planted and constructed. It's something that we always tend to take for granted and we don't really think about. Most people who come to parks in this day and age, most Americans, I would argue, have a respect for the environment. They go out, you enjoy nature, you go hiking occasionally, a day hike or a camping trip, you go and you enjoy, and generally people know you don't throw your trash out. You don't kill all the wildlife. You don't cut down all the trees. We have a healthy, generally, respect for our environment. That is a new thing. You look at these guys who go into the CCC, especially early on, where are most of them from? Most of them are from the cities. These guys are out of work for a reason. They're either from the cities or they're from farms that have gone defunct, that have been repossessed by banks, or have simply gone under because of bad environmental practices, like in the Dust Bowl. That's your big demographic, your city factory workers and your farmers. Neither of them really care about forests and trees. Farmers cut down trees so they have land to grow crops, to survive. If you live in the city, again, you don't have money or care about going out camping and viewing stuff. You care about providing for your family. And when you take these guys, again, as I say, and send them out into the proverbial American wilderness, they join not to save the environment. They join for 3 hot meals a day. Keep in mind, many of these guys are living out of bread lines and soup kitchens for at least months, if not years, up to this point since 1929. They join for $30 a month to survive, to get through the Great Depression. But what happens is a change. When they take these guys out and send them out and put them to work, if you look in their journals and you look at the letters that these guys sent home, what you see is a change in the way they view their job. They become invested in it. And these guys start writing home letters and talking about how proud they are to feel that they're literally helping save the physical American landscape. They're talking about that, they're breathing clean air now and we're planting trees. You should have seen this place before we got here. That is a constant thread running through the CCC until they're done in 1942. And the CCC are done away with in April of 1942 with the onset of the Second World War. We don't need 3 million men carrying shovels, we need them carrying rifles. So the CCC are officially done away with. And here's where the story continues. These 3 million young men will serve their time in the CCC, at least 6 months. They might re-up, they might not. They have this experience. They go back home, they get married, they have jobs. Most all of them will go off and fight in the Second World War. Those who survive will come home, continue to build families, and in the post-war boom, what do? They go on vacations. These guys make a point to load up the family in the proverbial station wagon and go back to parks, to the places that they had worked at 20 years prior, to show these places off to their kids and point out the tall trees that were once saplings that they planted, that stay in the cabins that they helped to build. And they impress upon them, look after the environment, look after this place even after I'm gone. Don't throw your trash out, don't cut down the trees, etc., etc. This is where a respect and a love for the American environment works its way into American society, not just because of your dreamers and poets, your John Muirs, but because of your average working class American public that has directly had an impact on the American environment.